despite Delaware State being a respectable FCS program. So that was a fucking lie. I may be in over my head for this week, boys. I expected a lot of action to occur through the first week of college football, but somehow every time, my expectations are blown away. We had crazy upsets, blowouts, close games, and probably some gasoline poured under a few coaching seats. Nick Saban already looks like he's already considering revoking his retirement, so based on all that, football is back. Before we begin, this video was sponsored by nobody. Also, I'm not going to cover every single game of the week because there are a fair share of 60-point blowouts that I don't feel like covering, and more than 5 people probably don't care about. More than likely, if your team wasn't covered here, they will be covered at some point in the season. Alright, well, let's get started. Now, we'll likely be able to roll directly into the late night Thursday slate, just as long as the teams ahead do what they're supposed to. Yep, of course we have an oddball here. Before this game, my concern was the NC State defense because Western Carolina had one of the top offenses in the FCS last season. Well, not only did Western Carolina have almost 400 yards of total offense, but they nearly knocked off the ranked team. I don't care if you're a Group of 5 team or Power 5, if you are tied with an FCS squad at halftime, you don't belong anywhere near the top 25. Grayson McCall, despite his 300 yards passing, was constantly pressured because of the offensive line he was working with. He just looked nervous in the pocket constantly. Don't let the final score fool you. This was a close game against an FCS team who couldn't figure out how to kick a field goal. I would say this is an embarrassing, pathetic showing for a ranked team, but then again, you're in the ACC. No point in beating that dead horse. Luckily for NC State, you should have a week to rest. It's not like you have to face a team who scored 69 points last week. And despite that bad offensive line showing, it's not like you have to face the top edge rusher in the country next week. You'll be fine. Oh wait, never mind. We'll come back to that. Guess what, everyone? Colorado's playing, which means it's time for ESPN to glaze up that donut and for Shedeur Sanders to show everyone his cool watch again. Don't get me wrong, Shedeur is and always has been a great quarterback. He'll likely be a Heisman finalist this year. Not because he'll stat pad or anything like that, but because he's going to have Heisman performances every week in order to win any games. You know what's worse than being tied with an FCS team at halftime? Outright losing to them at the half. This is exactly what happens when you decide to go for it on 4th at your own 35. There's being aggressive, and then there's being a dumbass. Take a guess at which one this is. Credit to the Colorado defense for being elephant sphincter and allowing Cam Miller to go for 350 total yards of offense. This Colorado team has the same strengths and weaknesses from last year. The heavy reliance on Travis Hunter could end up being the team's downfall. Side note, Colorado was second last year in penalty yards. You want to take a guess at what glaring issue they have this year? You guessed it, the same damn thing. Shiloh Sanders didn't learn his lesson from last season and is still racking up more penalty yards for the Buffs. Once again, the offensive line has trouble blocking, and if Colorado doesn't have any depth again like last year, you're in for a long year. But with the ball up by 5 and 2 minutes left to go, no reason to do anything stupid. Why are you throwing the ball? North Dakota State has no timeouts, you morons! Great, now you're giving the ball right back to them. And here's the prayer shot we've all been looking for.
5 seconds to go. He gets it off. It's short of the end zone. They wrestled for it, but time has expired.
Alright, let's all be honest here. Colorado should have lost this game. On that same drive, this clear targeting call was blatantly ignored. Now, I'm not going to tell you the refs are biased against one team or another because that stupid conspiracy crap is something I'm never going to talk about in my life. Nonetheless, Colorado survives despite nearly crystalballing the game away. I'm going to tell you now that these penalty issues are going to be a major problem in the future. The immediate future, as what's awaiting in Lincoln, Nebraska is an angry Husker who wants blood after the last season's debacle. In case you're wondering, Deion Sanders has already gone to another press conference saying that basically they hate us because they ain't us. Well, to your credit, you're half right. Go Huskers! Alright, now that this game is back, welcome to the Battle of Mid. The greatest battle of who can throw a dump off to the flat better between two guys named Max. Also, if you wanted to see a match where kickers are as useful as sandpaper condoms, good news, this one's for you. Despite the weak offensive showing, Max Johnson seems to have mended well with the Tar Heel offense. At least on some plays. Max Brosmer seems to have mended well with the Golden Gopher offense. Might end up jinxing that one too. Well, this was turning into a real barn burner between Maxes until, unfortunately, the absolute most hated being in existence made his entrance. The injury bug. This is just extremely unfortunate. Max Johnson is someone whose entire career has been riddled with season-ending injuries that squandered his potential. Life is just unfair. For him to go out like this in Game 1 is just cruel. This is the way of the game though, hoping for a quick recovery. So in comes Connor Harrell, and by this point the Tar Heels relied heavily on Omarion Hampton in the run game. Thankfully though, by this point the kickers figured out what they were on scholarship for because the red zone offenses proceeded to die. Down 17-19, it was up to Minnesota to nail a 47-yard field goal.
27. On the way. It is no good. North Carolina survives.
Okay, so maybe you guys can blame the wind now. It did not want you to have any happiness today. Minnesota comes up short in a rare case of premature fireworks. Both teams have definitely improved though, so keep your chin up, Minnesota man. PJ Fleck is the merchant of 7-5 seasons. Welcome to Friday, everyone. No shortage of painfully mid here. Unlike the last game where the two quarterbacks were at least making several big plays down the stretch, this one had two quarterbacks who looked like they learned the forward pass yesterday. It's like both teams agreed to reenact the Iowa spring game. Offense was a term you found little of in this game. But you know what there was a lot of? Ref control.
And Spencer, based off that hand motion, is going to be done.
To be fair though, this was indeed the right call. Keep in mind the score right there is 2-0. There's everything you need to know. I must have missed something with the Jonathan Smith hire. I didn't expect him to shift the team to a contender for the Big Ten in one offseason, but this is inexcusable. But FSU is a good group of 5 team. They went 4-8 in 2023. I'm not making that mistake again. You better hope that you can hold on this 4th down.
Bencher steps up. Green jersey's in his face, and he is dragged down. Got that off.
Well, you survived, but there's definitely room for improvement to say the least. If you can even get a mid-tier level offense, you might be able to contend for a bowl game. It starts with beating Maryland on the road, which, 50-50 maybe? Oh well, at least you don't have Mel Tucker anymore.
I'm over here stroking my dick, I got lotion on my dick when y'all be stroking my shit.
Attention Luke Fickell. You left Cincinnati at the height of the program's entire existence following a playoff victory and a transition to the Power 5, and this is what you followed up with? Unlike Jonathan Smith where you can use year 1 as an excuse, this is your 2nd year and you're in a dogfight with Western Michigan, with an experienced quarterback at the helm. I didn't think Tyler Van Dyke was breaking records at Wisconsin, but I didn't expect him to be this bad. Not much else you can do to look worse than this.
Snap though. Domsky was 3 out of 8 a year ago. Look, it's a fake! Look at this! It's Domsky!
Okay, so is Wisconsin just cursed to be a mid team every year now? If they were as blessed as this guy was to not get penalized for literally hurdling an official, then this wouldn't be happening. Y'all better figure it out and fast.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so.
Another game, another struggle to win against an inferior opponent. I'll tell you the same thing I told the Michigan State man. You've got time to get it under control, not a lot of time, but some time. Unless you want to get pantsed by Alabama again, Luke Fickell, gotta learn to let Van Dyke throw the ball. Will it work? I suppose we'll figure it out in due time. Imagine being in Texas and having to wake up early Saturday morning, but you're having to watch your team in a dogfight with the worst team in the ACC. Yes, the ACC. That was a TCU fan's reality Friday night as they had to watch their team play until 2 in the morning Eastern. Still 1 o'clock if you're a Central Timer. Either Stanford's defense is straight up garbage or TCU just had a really good offensive game going on. I mean, Stanford has a guy with the last name Daniels as their quarterback, so I suppose it checks out. Both teams are playing with coverage and tackling straight out of the Build-A-Bear workshop. TCU was what looked like to be the better team on the field, but having 4 turnovers doesn't do you any good, I would think. Once TCU took the lead late in the fourth quarter, Stanford thought it would be really funny to try and throw a deep ball on every play despite having 3 minutes to work with. By that point, their fate was sealed.
4th and 16. Daniels steps up and throws, and it's tipped up incomplete.
Hey, look at that, TCU, man. Looks like staying up past midnight wasn't a total waste of time. You're one of the lucky ones. Some fans have to watch their team fold at the final stage of the game on the West Coast. Don't worry, that shit show's on the way. As for you, Stanford, welcome to the ACC. Get used to this. On to the Saturday slate. We all knew there was some sort of omen to how this was going to go when Dabo Swinney announced 2 weeks ago that he could no longer be allowing fan callers on his show. It was a telltale sign to what type of atrocity was coming. Remember when Georgia and Clemson matched in 2021 and fans called it one of the worst games of the season? Picture that, but somehow even worse. The only offense seen in the first half was how offended I was by how unbelievably terrible watching this game was. Despite Georgia's continued insistence on letting Clemson have a successful drive of offense, Cade Klubnik decided playing quarterback correctly was overrated and proceeded to lay out dud after dud after dud. The play calling wasn't helping either. Remember 2 years ago when Clemson fans hyped up Garrett Riley as this offensive guru who would revolutionize the Clemson offense? All bringing him in did was make us fans all realize how good Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence were. Speaking of Trevor, despite the loss of Trevor Etienne because he played a part in Need for Speed Athens, Georgia eventually got tired of playing with their food and proceeded to brutalize Clemson. Georgia controlled the line of scrimmage through the entire game, holding Clemson to only 57 rushing yards. It looked like a reenactment of that one time ING Academy hosted Bishop Sycamore. These two teams don't even have that much of a talent difference. This is simply an execution issue. This got worse when you realized that Dabo Swinney had to say on College Game Day, quote, "It's not about the score on the scoreboard." Yeah it is, Dabo. That's exactly what they've hired you for. This is all stemming from Dabo's sheer stubbornness against using the transfer portal to fill in gaps on his team. You don't need to buy a bunch of rentals, just fill in the holes on your team. That's what it's there for. It's been called before, but Dabo's sheer arrogance against the portal will be his downfall. With how talented Clemson's roster still is, these results are going to grow on the Tiger faithful, and before you know it, the fans who still believe in the way you're running the program will eventually turn on you. Eventually, the administration will too. Time is running out, Dabo. If you're this intensely against the transfer portal and the way college football is run now, you could always just retire like Nick Saban. But continuing down this slope that you're going will only end in one thing: disaster. This choice is quickly turning into an ultimatum. Change the philosophy or let your coaching tenure die on this hill. If we're doing a coaching search for Clemson, I vote Tyler for Spartanburg. I think he knows what he's doing. Also, can someone please beat Georgia? The last thing we need is for the internet infestation known as Georgia fans to win another national championship. Again? Okay, I guess we'll come back for this monsoon later. Welcome to the Nashville Construction Zone. And this one should be anticlimactic. Virginia Tech is my sleeper team to win the ACC, and Vanderbilt at this point is the worst team in the SEC. So I'm expecting an easy blowout win for Tech.
1 hour later.
What happened here? In case you're wondering, the difference here is how well Vanderbilt ran the ball, but it's also the Vanderbilt team is actually built differently. Bringing in Jerry Kill and quarterback Diego Pavia, both from New Mexico State, seemed to be a much bigger deal than originally thought. This is coming after a Virginia Tech player called Pavia a, quote, poor man's Trace McSorley. Kyron Drones of Virginia Tech had a phenomenal day, with 322 yards passing, but since the defense did him absolutely no favors, he was forced to match their scoring drive by drive, which eventually led to this.
Thomas, the running back. Drones wants to go deep, and the coverage was busted. Ali Jennings! Touchdown, Hokies!
Well, this position is all too familiar for Vandy, so they're pretty much prepared themselves for heartbreak.
Diego Pavia upset Auburn on the road last year at New Mexico State, trying to pull up the upset this year at Vanderbilt to the front pylon and another touchdown.
Oh, wait, I forgot. This Vandy team is built differently. Oh my goodness. Vandy's getting the ball back. It's happening, everyone. It's really happening.
Snap is down, kick on the way, Taylor. Oh, he missed it one right.
And Vandy's back. But hey, maybe something happens in overtime. Let's not give up on the Commodores just yet. Wait, they're actually doing it. No way. They're going to pull this off. It's 4th down. Can they do it?
Pocket is there for Schlee. He'll buy some time. Heave it to the end zone and the back, and it's incomplete.
They did it. They did it. Vanderbilt's back, everyone. Vandy's back. They're back. Vandy's going all the way, baby. That's what you get for bad-mouthing Diego Pavia. This is how you know college football is back. Vandy, congratulations. You've made a statement today, and hopefully you'll get 5 more wins on the table. The program desperately needs it. Virginia Tech, I know this is an embarrassing loss, but then again, say it with me, everyone. You're in the ACC. Now, I know I've been clowning the ACC as of recently, but let me introduce you to the lone exception. This is the moment in time where fans begin to circle back to Jim McElwain and say, perhaps I treated you too harshly. What can I even say about this that would be good? What is good about Florida? Don't get me wrong, Miami is definitely the bright spot in the ACC. They've got a great quarterback in Cam Ward and a consistent run game. But watching Florida is football diarrhea. Everything about Florida that sucked last year somehow got worse. No offensive line, no passing game, Graham Mertz has got bricks for feet, no pressure on defense, formations completely out of position, and Cam Ward was doing basically whatever he wanted, and Florida couldn't do jack diddly doo-dah squat about it. I was convinced because of the difficulty of the schedule this season that Napier would get another year to get it together before he got canned, but now I'm convinced he needs to pack his bags now. He won't get booted this week, but the inevitable is definitely on the way. I don't care how good Florida fans say DJ Lagway is. Don't forget how many recruits are visiting Gainesville to watch this assload of ass. The situation is so bad that Napier is blaming the fans. He's blaming the fans. No, yeah, you're right, Napier. Florida's not bad because the players are unprepared. It's because the media guy in the Central Florida basement said so. Great logic there, buddy. Even Dan Mullen is clouding the state of Florida's program right now. The writing's on the wall as to what's to come now. The worst part about all of this is that even if you do fire Napier sooner than expected, Scott Strickland is still your athletic director. As you all know, his track record is amazing. I'll leave it here since I'll have plenty of time to talk about you, Florida man, but you have not hit rock bottom yet. But unless something changes, you're in a nosedive straight to it. Maybe next week Napier will figure out how to beat the water bottle he still can't open. Okay, now that that monsoon is over, let's talk about the monsoon Penn State put on West Virginia. Despite getting whooped, Neil Brown and Garrett Green might still be able to compete for the Big 12 because of how competitive the conference will be, but fumbling 4 times probably depletes your chances to win by a significant margin. This is one of the few games I've seen besides Cupcakes where Drew Larb actually played like a high talent. Yeah, I know, 216 yards and 3 touchdowns isn't something exactly mind-blowing, but this passing game mixed with Nick Singleton could potentially be lethal in the future. Garrett Green did what he could to get West Virginia back into the game, but fumbling the ball 3 times is not the way to go about it. Will the Mountaineers blame the weather for this one? Did they even have any momentum before the lightning delay? Yeah, I don't even think they had any momentum at all. All the momentum is coming based on the fact that this game is over. Now they can take a boat back to the country roads. As for Penn State, this win propels them to what should be a playoff run since they don't have to play Michigan this year. You still have to play Ohio State though, so 11-1 is the ceiling.
Are you kidding me?
No, your eyes do not deceive you. Old Dominion is outplaying South Carolina. Despite the absolute liquid anal juice Florida was today, South Carolina was that, but bleeding garnet and black. Safe to say Lenora Sellers was not the sleeper for the Heisman some people thought he was. Now, a big part of the problem was that the offensive line was Swiss cheese, and the wide receivers dipped their hands in butter before the game. If either of those things can be improved, there's definitely some room for Sellers to rebound. But yeah, 16-16 in the fourth quarter is a massive red flag. Good luck winning any SEC games like that. Can you even win this one?
Again, dropping 8. Over the middle, high throw. That one's picked off.
You know, as the season prevails, I'm more inclined to believe that Shane Beamer actually did steal those signs to beat Tennessee and Clemson. Beamer wasn't even jumping around celebrating for getting blown out. He seems to have finally woken up, and good timing too, because unless things change sooner than later, he might be joining Napier at McDonald's. Will we beat Clemson at Death Valley? Yeah, buddy, put the fries in the bag. Speaking of Connor Stallions, it turns out that he made a bigger impact than we previously thought. It was expected that with the transition of Jim Harbaugh to Sharon Moore, that there were going to be some growing pains along the way. But wow, they couldn't even figure out who to start at quarterback before the game. Davis Warren got the start, and Michigan fans were not happy, considering it was thought by most that Alex Orji would be the guy. And yeah, he struggled. Bad. Really bad. Despite the failures in the passing game, the major red flag here was the Michigan run game. Having one of the best rushing seasons the past few years, it was expected to be business as usual for the Wolverines in that department. However, Donovan Edwards, the cover athlete for EA College Football 25, had 27 yards rushing. Now, even though Kalen Mullings had a decent day with 92 yards, this is alarming. Michigan fans did get their wish though, as Alex Orji later came into the game to hand the ball off. Now, eventually Michigan would pull away, but this is not the showing that a defending national champion should have. Unlike the last few years, you don't have a bunch of cupcakes in the non-con schedule either. Texas is coming to town, and unless you figure out how to run the ball, you're in for a heat death of epic proportions. Start prepping now. And having another tunnel dispute after the game isn't a great way to start it. One thing I'll give you credit for is that by far, you had a way less pathetic showing than these people. So this is your introduction to the Big Ten, huh? Real impressed. You came into this game as a top 3 team. I'll be shocked if you stay in the top 10. Despite Dylan Gabriel putting up almost 400 yards, you struggled against Idaho. If you look at the box score, you'd think Oregon should have won this game by 50 points, but lack of red zone creativity and dumbassery on the offensive line were key factors as to why they couldn't put this game away. Eventually, the talent gap won the day, and Oregon managed to get away with the W, but this tells me one of two things is happening. The Big Ten is going to consist of Ohio State ramming it in the entire conference, or the Big Ten is going to be an absolute shit show where somehow Iowa plays Nebraska in the conference championship. It all depends on whether or not Ohio State dies in the process. One thing is for sure though, this is the furthest I've seen from a top 3 team. People clown some fan bases for beating an FCS team by like 60 points and bragging about it as if you beat a top 5 team. It's because doing that is what you're supposed to do. You weren't even able to do that against the likes of Idaho. Half the teams in the SEC would still be scoring on them. This does nothing but reinforce the belief that the Big Ten is nowhere near the SEC in terms of quality. But then again, maybe we're looking at the wrong teams. Speaking of which, primetime football, baby. And no, I'm not talking about the pretend media show in Boulder. I'm talking about the game of the week. Notre Dame, a team lingering into the top 5, going on the road to take on Mike Elko in his first game as a Texas A&M head coach. Did it live up to the hype? Fuck no. Yes, it was a close game, but close games don't generally make them good. Exhibit A being this game. Connor Wayman versus Riley Leonard was everything it wasn't supposed to be. Wayman was a guy who I was excited to see this year, as battling against injury he was expected to make a triumphant return tonight. Instead, what we got was Jeff Sims' evil twin, Seth Jims. He managed to go 12 of 30, barely completing 30% of his passes for 100 yards. That's disturbingly bad. Leonard was better, but only got 158 passing yards with 18 out of 30 passes complete. Both teams ran the ball pretty well, with Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love having 91 yards on 14 carries, but both teams' ability to have irritable bowel syndrome in the red zone made for a field goal extravaganza. By the fourth quarter, both teams had only managed 13 points. But as we know, somebody had to win this game.
Love. Burst over the middle.
Well, this is great. Now the SEC fans get to hear about that since the 8th or 9th best team lost, that the SEC is overrated and ain't no good. A lot of this came down to quarterback play. Leonard playing better than Wayman, even if just by a little bit, was the game changer here. Even without Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M missed no beats in creating a laughably bad offense. Notre Dame outplayed A&M on the line of scrimmage too, and even though A&M had chances to get the lead back, they could never capitalize. The good news is for A&M that this is the hardest game you'll have to play for a while. The month of September should be a breeze for the Aggies. Notre Dame's schedule every year is a breeze, so we can just go ahead and shoot themselves in for the 12-team playoff at this point. If you didn't know this happened, it's okay, I didn't either. I heard from a guy who heard from a guy who heard from a depressed Texas Tech fan that this happened. With all the blowouts this week, it's great that we can rely on Texas Tech to shit themselves on television every week. Texas Tech's offense had a great day with over 500 yards total. You want to know who did it? The defense. In fact, I don't even know if they showed up at all. Abilene Christian had 500 yards, not total, but passing. They had another 100 on the ground. Is it like a secret rule in college football that Texas Tech isn't allowed to play defense, or is that a Big 12 thing? Could be either with Colorado in the conference now. This game went into overtime, in which of course both teams scored, but rather than continuing the game, Abilene Christian took the risk.
ACU going for two. McIver hit!
Yay! Boy, you're awfully lucky, Joey McGuire. If you didn't clutch this one up, you'd be right on the hot seat with some other coaches. I don't care how easy the schedule is, if you don't get it together now, basketball season might be coming sooner than later. Sunday Night Football. Wait, can I even say that? Nonetheless, we're in for a good one here. These are two teams that last year forgot the word defense in the dictionary. LSU had a Heisman-winning quarterback last year, but with a non-existent secondary, were not able to do much with him. With him gone though, as well as talented Malik Neighbors, people wondered what the new offense would look like under Garrett Nussmeier. USC was bringing in a new quarterback as well in Miller Moss, who put up a great performance in the Holiday Bowl against Louisville. The impending matchup was actually about what we expected, a shootout of epic proportions. Well, sort of. Both quarterbacks threw for over 300 yards and LSU had the advantage in rushing, with John Emery Jr. breaking off some good runs every now and then. Kyron Lacey is clearly filling in the spot Malik Neighbors' absence left, and it looked like LSU was going to take control of the game as they were the more talented team on paper. But you forgot one crucial little detail. Your coach is Brian Kelly. It's been a common well-known fact that Burger King can't coach in big games, and he exacerbates that here. Going forward on 4th down early in the game where you can just take the points and go up by 3, and every time LSU lined up in the red zone, the offense would just go completely limp because of the play calling. Apparently, it's illegal to throw a pass beyond the line of scrimmage according to Brian Kelly. The play calling was so predictable that LSU was suffering from constant 3-and-outs. And even all of that wasn't the deal breaker. It was the penalties. Constant penalties at the worst possible time. Excessive celebration and neutral zone infractions at the most crucial points of the game. Wowie gee, it's almost like this very talented team is poorly coached or something. Wow! By the end of the game, the LSU defense began to cave, and you bet USC capitalized. With 2 minutes left, LSU kicked a field goal to tie it, but the writing was already on the wall. LSU hasn't won a conference opener since the days of Joe Burrow, so we all knew how this was going to go.
Woody Marks might make it.
Fun fact, DirecTV shut down ESPN right before this game kicked off, and I have a feeling they were doing LSU fans a favor. Now you don't have to witness this garbage every week. I wonder if Notre Dame fans are breathing a sigh of relief right now. As long as Brian Kelly is the coach, this team won't be able to win a title. Not because they aren't talented enough, but because every time LSU is in a position to win the game, they go flaccid because BK can't win the big ones. LSU fans are one of the most hostile fan bases on planet Earth, so too many more of these and Burger King could actually be working there. No matter how many desks you slam, the patience from Tiger Nation is running out. You've still got time to get it going before the rough part of the SEC slate begins, but too many more of those excessive celebrations and you'll be just like Colorado, a team which will bite on karma soon enough. The prime example of said karma can be seen right here. It's even funnier the second time! You thought the first dose of poetic justice was enough? No, you've got a lot more to learn. Clearly last week's result proved that Georgia Tech has improved, but it also proved that Florida State has nosedived into the shadow realm. That clock in the first quarter was more functional than the entire Florida State offense. Putting Florida State and offense in the same sentence is an insult to the word offense. DJ Oogie was, as we all expected, not very good in this game, only completing 50% of his passes. His receivers tried to help, but they couldn't catch a cold. Here's a fun fact for you. Did you know this point in the season, DJ has more tackles than touchdowns? Seriously, it's a real stat. By far, though, the most alarming stat was Florida State had a total of 21 rushing yards. 21! To put into perspective how bad this was, every other team I've covered in this video blew that rushing stat out of the water. Every single one. Boston College didn't blow anyone away either, with Castellanos only having 100 yards passing the ball. You want to know what Boston College did have, though? A run game. Trayshawn Ward, former Florida State player by the way, had more than triple the rushing yards of FSU's entire team, and he wasn't even the top rusher in the game. People tried to say because Mike Norvell bought a season worth of one-year rentals that he was a top 5 coach. Top 5 coaches don't lose to Bill O'Brien in his first year as a head coach. Let me guess, is FSU getting ready to sue the city of Boston? They already sued all of Ireland last week. I guess they're going to have to sue their own color too, since they just got shit-canned by the Golden Eagles. I can't explain in words just how hilarious this is. I'd feel bad for Florida State if the fans were the biggest crybabies on the internet for 8 straight months. Newsflash, the playoff committee was right then, and they're definitely correct now. Now do like one of those fans on Twitter and eat shit. Oh wait, he deleted his Twitter. Expect the rest of the fan base to follow suit. Can't wait to see the Florida State game in November at 10 o'clock a.m. on Nick Jr.
That's not what he wanted to cook.
Well, that's everything for week 1. Expect week 2 to be just about as insane. This week was a ref extravaganza, so we're already on fire with that one. For those curious, here's my week 2 top 25. Stick around for next week where I'm sure I'll have plenty more teams to go off on. Until then, I'll see you guys next time, and of course, power to Tardaria. Wait a minute. Houston lost to UNLV?